So there is now less than 4 weeks remaining in the race for former Congressman Chris Lee's seat out in western New York, one of just 2 special elections in the nation that will be held next month. The other, for those who are not in the know, is in California. So the Republican candidate, Assemblywoman Jane Corwin, came into the campaign as the frontrunner thanks to the GOP enrollment edge in the 26th district and her ability to self-fund. So it's no surprise then that Corwin has adopted a classic frontrunner strategy, keeping a rather low media profile and letting her TV ads and her surrogates do the dirty work for her. The Assemblywoman's top attack dog is Erie County GOP Chairman Nick Langworthy. He has unleashed some zingers at Corwin's opponent, Democrat Kathy Hochul, this week, and he is kind enough to join me in the studio. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
It's good to have you here with us instead of all the way out in western New York.
I think you should bring the show to Buffalo.
We may very well at some point go on tour, in which case I expect to hang out with you and eat a lot of wings. So just give me, before we get into the nitty-gritty, the sort of overview in your mind of how things are going out on the hustings out there.
Well, I mean, it's a dynamic campaign because it's a 3-candidate campaign. I mean, I think that a special election, brings a bigger megaphone to, the public's awareness of this race because it's the only political activity really going on right now in the whole state.
Sure.
So you get much more attention, keeps your days busy,
yeah.
And but you have a non-traditional race because there's 3 well-funded candidates that are running a paid campaign and paid messaging.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, Kathy Hochul actually raised $350,000, and she hasn't put any of her own money in because she's not as wealthy as Jane Corwin and certainly not as wealthy as Jack Davis, the independent candidate. That was a better than expected showing by the end of March 31st was the report that I'm speaking of. Each of the other candidates, Davis and Corwin, lent their own campaigns $1 million. I mean, doesn't that indicate a strong support for her, a stronger than expected support? Were you surprised?
Well, I mean, Kathy Hochul is far from, an insurgent new candidate.
No, I'm not suggesting
as
that.
the county clerk in Erie County, she's been a successful fundraiser. She's run well-funded campaigns in the past. I'm not surprised that she was able to raise $350,000. But, this race is probably more along the lines of a $2 to $3 million venture, not that. So she's still a long ways off from really what the total cost of the race would be. But Jane Corwin's also got really substantial support. She's spending her time across the 7 counties of the district, and she's been doing fundraising as well. So we've got a couple large events coming up in a few weeks.
Well, by contrast, she had $100,000, raised about $102,000 in the same time period. When you say that she has a couple of events, I mean, she was down in D.C., if I'm not mistaken, and John Boehner is helping her raise money.
Certainly. I mean, anytime, a candidate runs for Congress, they typically will take a couple trips to Washington to go in front of a few groups. I know Kathy Hochul even made a trip to New York.
She did, and you actually zinged her on it. You guys said that she was collecting money out of the district, hanging out with her liberal friends. I mean, what's so different between that and Jane Corwin going to Washington out of the district to raise money? What's the difference there?
I think Kathy Hochul likes to present herself as a moderate, and I believe that the people that are funding her campaign in New York City are far from moderates. It's a very liberal group. I mean, she's touted the endorsement of NARAL, organizations like that. Congresswoman Maloney is far from a moderate voice, and she's very out of tune with Western New York values. So I do think that you have to really judge these candidates by who's supporting them, and those are out of the mainstream for Western New York values.
Well, I mean, and on the other side, you have to judge them by what it is that they stand for, no? And Jane Corwin said that she would have, in fact, voted for the Paul Ryan proposal that would, according to the Democrats, end Medicare as we know it. This is another area where you attacked Kathy Hochul for saying that she would not actually have supported that budget. The idea, and I understand the idea, the Republicans say that the Democrats want to increase debt, right, and increase spending. But on the flip side, are you not concerned? I mean, the Medicare issue is getting so much heat all over the nation, and these 2 specials, the first one in California on the 17th and then this one in New York on the 24th, can be the bellwether for how things might go in 2012.
Well, what Jane Corwin has said is she would have voted for the Ryan budget proposal. As you know, that's not the total budget. There's budget bills that go into that
Sure.
that actually execute things. She also expressed reservations with some of the things, but she felt it was important to start a conversation, an actual plan. The Democrats don't have a plan. And Kathy Hochul has not presented a plan on how she would cut the deficit, but she is campaigning to raise taxes. And she's trying to play class warfare.
But how is she campaigning to raise taxes?
In
exactly?
her latest ad, she's saying, no more tax breaks. Well, that means she's going to increase.
She's saying
tax.
no more tax breaks for the rich, which is exactly what the president is saying. I mean, that's in keeping with the whole Democratic line.
I mean, what we've seen in the last few days is just classic Democratic scare tactics. You're playing class warfare and scaring seniors, and that's what they're trying to do through, Mrs. Hochul's ad that she's attacked Jane with.
So you don't believe then that this Medicare issue could come back to bite the Republicans, specifically the Assemblywoman and any other Republican? I mean, you have seen the footage from the town halls where you have very angry people. I mean, now look, some of those people, some of it's staged. I'll give you that. Some of those people are protesters who are sent there by organizations like Move On and other liberal organizations to protest.
Absolutely.
Sure, but there are also angry seniors who are afraid of changes to Medicare, or people who are about to be seniors because people who are currently in the system would not see the changes under the Republicans' plan.
The plan is a starting point. He would certainly have to, put flesh on the bone as to exactly how things would be implemented. But my understanding is that current, Medicare recipients and those soon to become Medicare recipients wouldn't be changed. It'd be people, more in you and my age bracket that would see a different program.
Well, aren't you worried about getting old and not having Medicare available to you? I'm worried about that.
What I'm worried about is the country defaulting because it can't pay its debts.
Okay, well, sure. I mean, I think that the Democrats...
if we don't get spending under control in a very short order, we're going to have a drastic change in our standard of living in this country.
Okay, well, this is a good segue when you talk about debt to talk about raising the debt ceiling. Again, this is someplace where the Assemblywoman has said she would not vote to raise the debt ceiling. This is, again, in keeping with the Republican line down in Washington, not raising the debt ceiling unless there are significant spending cuts at the back end. The Democrats say, well, that could cause the nation to default. We're going to hit the debt ceiling in the middle of next month. I mean, is that not irresponsible?
Well, the problem is for years and years, and both parties are to blame, they have just kicked the can down the road. And what we do is we just continue to raise the debt ceiling over and over and over, and we are not addressing the core reasons that we need to keep increasing this debt ceiling. I mean, the spending in this country has exploded under the Obama administration. I mean, George Bush was certainly not a fiscal conservative. I mean, we could have done more in that era to curb spending. But, this is right in front of our face now. I mean, there has to be drastic changes in the way we spend money in this country. Otherwise, we will default, regardless of the debt ceiling.
Chairman, first of all, I enjoy having this policy discussion with you. I would much rather have this policy discussion with your candidate. I got to ask you why she's not doing sit-down, extended interviews.
I mean, Jane is campaigning across the district. She keeps a very rigorous schedule of events, and
so she doesn't have time.
She hasn't done the show, but that's the campaign's decision. But she is out working the district. I mean, people see her all over the place. So.
Well, do you think she should? Do you think she should sit down for an extended interview? Not to say that I don't enjoy talking to you, because I really do.
She's talked to media across the district. I mean, she has press events. She has been accessible. The campaign made a decision so far based on her availability and calendar. So.
What about a debate?
I have not heard yet any public debates. Usually the League of Women Voters comes together with an event in this congressional district. I have not heard if there'll be a televised debate or not yet.
Do you think she should?
I think that debating is, there's probably likely to be a forum of some kind.
So you think it's a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just want to, without sort of being too much of an abrupt turnaround here, I do want to talk a little bit about state and national politics, specifically national, because we've been talking so much about Donald Trump. You are in a more conservative area of the state. You were a supporter of Carl Palladino. He was certainly not a conventional candidate. So I wonder if you might be supportive of Donald Trump.
I'm very intrigued by the Trump candidacy, and I really want to salute him for making real waves in just a couple of weeks. I mean, I don't know if he'll ultimately run for president or not, but what we've seen is the debate, which, I'm not a birther, but there's been people clamoring to see the president's birth certificate, the long form, for 4 years. And Donald Trump, in 2 weeks of television interviews, had the President of the United States at a podium with the birth certificate. I found that to be very impressive, and there must have been drastic effects on the President's polling numbers for him to make that decision.
But do you think he could lead the country? Do you think he has the disposition to lead the country?
I don't. I think he is a very entertaining and successful businessman. I think he has
So was Carl Palladino, for the record.
But I'm not sure if he's the best candidate that our party will have, but I welcome him to the conversation. He would have to convince the American public, and I haven't really vetted or seen any of the presidential candidates up close yet. I look forward to hopefully doing that soon at a few fundraising events coming up. And I understand that all the presidential candidates have been invited to Chairman Cox's dinner, so I don't know which ones will come or not. But also, I was kind of sad to see Haley Barbour, leave the presidential race as well. But I think Donald Trump is certainly an impact player on day one. He comes with universal name identification, and he will be an impact player in presidential politics if he so chooses.
And you're going down to that Manhattan GOP fundraiser at which he's expected to speak, correct?
Yes, I was invited by Chairman Isaacs, the Manhattan chair, to attend that luncheon.
So we will check in with you after that, because I will be very interested to hear what you have to say. In the meantime, I want to thank you for stopping by with us. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick Langworthy.